Hi, good afternoon. Steve Schofield here from beach.io. How are you all? I'm good. Thanks for asking. I wanted to do a quick video today to introduce something that I'm very excited about. We've been working on for a few weeks, but thinking about for a bit longer. And it really builds on the work that we've been doing with Hammer and Forge in terms of the static CMS, Jamstack kind of workflow. So for those of you may or may not know, we integrated into Hammer for Mac, our delightful Mac OS app, static site generator app that you can get from hammerformac.com. We integrated two of the sort of leading API-first CMS services into Hammer so that you can very easily integrate the data, your content that you're generating within these services and plug that into your sites at build time through the Hammer integration. So it's a really awesome way to mix the worlds of static and static tech and dynamic content that perhaps, let's face it, it's not always the developer and rarely should be the developer whose job it is to update content. But if you're sold on static tech and you don't have this kind of workflow, you end up writing, hard coding a lot of content into your website's files, and that doesn't really work in a lot of cases. It doesn't work for a lot of teams. So we have have had some experience with some of these services, like, as I mentioned, Contentful, who are absolutely rocking it. They have a great service. They've raised something like $16 million in VC money. Big clients, Nike and others that are already adopting this kind of workflow for making sure they can use their content in whatever client applications is relevant to do so, rather than having it all stuck in one monolithic CMS. So I don't need to convince you that API-first CMS platforms are interesting. I think some of these guys are already really proving that. What I was still stuck with was, how best to fully integrate this into a workflow end to end, from the content side of things, the content modeling and how we write our content, to plugging that into templates, all the way through to deployment and hosting of my site in the sort of most optimal fashion. And that was the piece that we were missing because we were plugging into these other services. So a few weeks ago, I started prototyping with Nikita and Tigran, who work with me, an idea that I had about actually leveraging Parse Server to create an open source, self-hostable, flexible service like Contentful that would achieve essentially the same thing, but with some key differences. Those that I mentioned, so it being open source, Contentful is not open source. It's a bit of a black box. They only offer a hosted, maintained service, which is great for a lot of people, but not for everyone. You're sort of locked into a single vendor. You don't have that kind of flexibility. So what I really liked was breaking down that particular barrier. You can self-host this on your Mac. You can you can host it on your own server. You can work with it offline, which is another thing that we've realized in testing is quite important to a lot of developers, the ability to actually build, to work on this stuff without necessarily having a connection to the internet. If you're on a train or you live in the countryside, as I do, sometimes that's quite important. So anyway, this video isn't just about talking about it. I wanted to show you where we got up to. So let's get on with a bit of a demo. There's three things I need. As you can see in my terminal window, I have three things here. I have a Parse Server app installed. So basically what you need there is head over to the Parse Server repo, read the quick start guide, but it's essentially a node.js app with express.js framework and a Mongo database, and then it has the Parse Server module in there, which gives us lots of great functionality and features. So I'm running this locally. You could use a hosted managed Parse Server service as well. And the reality is you'll probably use a mixture of those when you're developing. So we have Parse Server. We need the Chisel app. Now, when it comes to actually releasing this into the wild, you'll have a nice npm install Chisel. You'll have a nice Chisel command line tool for initializing it, but for now it's a little bit more tricky, but only slightly. And then the final thing we want is we'll want to run the Parse dashboard app as well, so we can actually see our underlying data. Okay, so let's get started. So first I'm going to fire up Parse Server. I'm going to fire up Chisel. And finally, I'm going to fire up Parse dashboard. I'm going to open a new Chrome window, and so we'll have our Parse dashboard. We will have, let's just check that these are Webpack still working away there. So that's fine, Parse Server is running. And we now have Chisel running as well. So that should be running on localhost 3000, port 3000. Okay, so this is Chisel. Chisel used to be codenamed Scrivener, as in writing, but I've changed it to Chisel, but you can still see some remnants of the old project branding here. This will all be cleaned up shortly. Okay, so let's just have a look. Okay, so if we take a look at our Parse Server dashboard, you can see we've got a clean Parse Server instance, no data. And the only thing you need in here to actually run Chisel is a user. So let's add a user now. We need to give a username and a password. Okay, nice secure password. Email is optional. And there we go. Okay, so that's all we actually need to access Chisel. So if we come over here, we can now access the app. Quick look around the app. Basically, there's two main sections. We have models and content, and we're going to run through those right now. But the first thing we need to do is create a site. So in this case, we'll have a quick example of building a blog. Our blog will have 3 content models. We will have a post, which will be our blog role. We'll have a page, which will be our kind of static contact us, about us pages. We will have an author as well. Okay, so let's come in here, fill these out. So this is our blog role. Each blog post will have a title, some body content. There will be a banner image and an author. Now we can just go through. As you can see, by default, we have an item that's been flagged as the title. We can change that, but this is good enough for me right now. We want the body to actually rather than be short text, we want it to be long text. We write quite a bit of content in, and we'll set it to the WYSIWYG editor, which you'll see why shortly. Banner image, we don't want that to be text, we would like that to be a media item, so if we upload an image, and the author is actually going to point to our author, an instance of our author model, so we're going to set that to, it'll be a reference. Okay, that's good enough for now. Our page is just going to be a static page. It will have just simply a title and some body content. And again, this will be long text, and we won't use the WYSIWYG, we'll just use the multi-line editor here. That's good. And then finally the author will have a name and an avatar, image, again, media item in here. Cool. So that's our content model basics set up. If we now head into the content tab, you can see there's nothing in here right now, so let's go ahead and create our first. Let's create the author first, so that would be me. And then we will create a first post and an about us page. Okay, so now we've got 3 content items created. Let's do the post first. So this is our first blog post. We can upload an image, and we created an author already, so we will pick up that author and link them in here. Publish that, so we've published our first post. If I come back into the models and look at the post, you can actually get an idea of the type of data we're going to get back from our REST API endpoint for our post resources. The author we've done, so let's create our page. You can see we've got the multi-line editor here. Okay, so that's that. If I come back into the post, you saw the multi-line editor, and you see we've got the body here. I set this to the WYSIWYG editor, so we have this nice medium style text editor. And actually, if you want a more immersive writing experience, you can go into this kind of full screen mode, where we can do all this kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, really that's the basics. You can then be as custom as you like with your content models. You can go about rapidly generating content. And so from there, let's take a look at one of the benefits of using Parse Server, is that straight away all of this is available via the blog, via the REST API, Parse Server REST API. So you can see here, we're calling this endpoint. I have my first post, it's the reference to the banner image, the author, our body content, the title of our post. And the great thing about this, and again with Parse Server, is that we can also play with this via the Parse client SDKs that they have for iOS, for Android, for iOS, Android, JavaScript, and even a PHP library. So already we have a lot of options for actually making use of this content. And that's kind of the final thing to say is that it's also really easy to actually make this this administrative interface publicly accessible. So if you wanted your team to be able to access it via a particular URL, we can do npm run build. This takes a little while, but essentially what Chisel will now do is build all the static files for the Chisel app. And once that's done building, I'm just going to pause the video whilst that finishes building. Alright, so now that's done building. It takes a little while for Webpack to build, but once it's done, it's done. So what we can do is actually open up here, and you can see now in the dist folder we have all our static minified content. If I just compress that folder and go over to our Chisel's sister product, Forge, which I have an account here, go into one of our sites, I can just grab this, chuck this in here. This will now deploy. And we've now got Chisel deployed and available via a public URL. So it's that really that simple. So what's next? Lots of work still to do in the Chisel app. I want to put some dynamic API documentation in here, since the API gets built on the fly as you're creating your models and your content. There's no reason why that shouldn't be possible. Various configuration settings, options, security settings, etc. We need to get into that. You can already add other users as well with scoped permissions. So this is on a per site basis. So let's just show you here. If I come in and you can see now we've got Chisel's actually created a lot of our classes in Parse Server for us as we've created our models. So that's great. We don't have to do anything there really. So let's say we have an editor user. Let's give them a password. Okay. Again, email is optional, but I don't like seeing it empty. So let's add them. So we now have this editor user. So if I come back into Chisel, let's do it in here. And let's create another site, so my personal site, of which for both of these I'm the owner. But let's say for the blog, I want my editor to join. So we have them here. Now I can make them an admin or just an editor. Okay, so if I fire up a new window, Chisel demo in here, and I come in as editor, you can see that as editor I only have access to the blog, whereas in here I have my blog and my personal. So that kind of works. It'd be nice when we actually have the invites and importing contacts from different services. That's not quite done. So that's still to come as well. So, and then the final thing will be actually enabling seamless integration into Hammer. So what we have at the moment, if I open up one of my projects through hammer.json, you can see we have this Contentful integration. So we will have the same for Chisel. You'll be able to create, map your content types, your models, and build your templates that can access that data at build time. So that's a whole nother video once that's done. But that's the intention. That's where we're going next. So hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for the long video, but I hope you enjoyed the demo. It's always nice to play with new products. So I encourage you to get involved in the discussion if you've got any ideas, if you want to collaborate as well. I'm very open to pull requests once I've published the actual repo. And yeah, do get involved. Let me know.